Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about job materials, the job application process, kind of more broadly. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about job application identity, how to present yourself in these kinds of documents, and also just like in your life as you go through life. Um, I'm also going to be talking about the specific materials and what you want to include, what their purposes are, what their rhetorical situations are, and all of that. And then we're going to end actually talking about what I'm calling unofficial materials. So the things that you need to keep in mind when you're applying for jobs, but aren't necessarily explicitly asked for in the materials. So what does writing have to do with getting a job? It seems self-evident that if you are good at what you do, if you have the relevant skills, you should get the job, right? Well, what's underneath that and what's kind of around that is the fact that you actually have to communicate what you can do. So in the kind of job application process, what you're going to see is that first you have to communicate to an HR person, an HR personnel. This person checks your resume pretty much exclusively, doesn't really usually look at cover letters. And this person is deciding which applicants have the relevant skills. And this is very specifically technical and field specific skills. It may include, like, if you have explicitly written that you are you have marketing skills or you have communicative skills. It may include that, but for the most part, these are very specific skills and criteria that need to be met. This is a larger percentage of applicants are accepted. About a quarter of applicants get past HR. And then these applications go to the hiring manager. And this person sees the written application in its entirety, so the resume and the cover letter. This person is assessing your ability to write, your credentials, to introduce yourself in your writing in the cover letter. And in this case, a smaller percentage gets accepted, about 5% of the original application. So about 20% of the applications that get past HR. So already you have two gates that have to be kind of passed through before you even get an interview, and both of those involve written skills. The first, HR, involves kind of what I would call a time-sensitive or design-sensitive skill. So if you can kind of highlight in the design of your documents that you have the relevant skills that were listed in the job ad, then you get past the first gate. The second gate is a little bit more subjective. It's not just about your experience, but also how you present yourself in your written cover letter. And then the kind of deal closer, involves verbal communication, and that's the interview. This is an extremely small amount that gets accepted, roughly 1%. And it's really what closes that deal is your ability to communicate about yourself to another person. So you have not just writing, but in general, communication is kind of the bedrock by which you get past these gates. And then finally, overall, a job application process involves process. It involves planning, researching for job ads. It involves drafting, which often can go back to that researching process. And then finally, revising, which is very much caught up in the reflexive act of drafting and researching and revising. So in the same way that you would do this for an essay, you're also kind of going through that process with your job application. So I wanted to kind of go over identity a little bit. And this is a little bit, this, to be honest, you may find use in this, you may not. But I think this is important to think about when you're going into the job application process. Identifying yourself as someone who is a job applicant versus a professional. A job applicant is the active applicant. This is the person, this is likely you. This is you are going out into the world trying to find a job. Typically, you're defining yourself based on the things you can do, so it's very task-oriented. And it meets the employer at the place where they want where they want specific skills. So you might say this is at the stage of the HR manager. The HR manager, when they're hiring a professor, they are looking for Kristen Gollihue instructor. They're looking for someone who can complete tasks associated with that particular identity. However, I think more often than not, hiring managers are wanting to see someone who identifies themselves through the lens of a professional identity. This is not just what you do, but who you are. So I am able to instruct college classrooms, but my identity is as an educator. So Kristen Gollihue educator is who I am. It kind of has this umbrella effect, saying that, okay, Kristen Gollihue knows how to do the things an instructor does, but she also has kind of an identity, a theory lens to who she is and what she can bring to this company or this educational institution. More often than not, you will see people who aren't actively looking for jobs take on this identity. So this is where I say this is the passive applicant. And when you do land a job, you're still going to be introducing yourself through the lens of what you do. But as someone who has the confidence and certainty of already having a job, you are likely to be able to identify yourself more along the lines of your profession. Who you are as a professional as opposed to what you do. And so just thinking about that, I find more often than not, and especially with the advent of the internet and kind of the web resume genre and the professional website and all that, it's really about identity and identifying yourself already as that professional who, maybe you don't have the experience, the professional experience, but you have immersed yourself in what it means to be an educator or a marketer or an economist. So kind of moving to the more material aspects of the job application process. You guys have already done this process of looking for positions. So you've looked on jobs boards, you've looked at the company websites, you've accessed the College Career Center, and you've kind of leveraged your network to find out what all is out there. The biggest thing that I want you to take away from this search process that you've already done is that you use that self-inventory to drive your search. When you look for a job somewhere down the line, or you want to switch careers, or you want to switch positions, switch companies, whatever, understanding what you want out of your profession and how to kind of find that out there in the job ads that are available. And then finally, another way to look for positions is actually what you're doing with the SWOT analysis and formal proposal. It's about interviewing. It's about meeting people, and it's not above your your position to email the person who's in charge of the division at a company that you want to work at. Ask them, can I talk to you about what you do? You're in some ways doing this with your mentor projects as well, and that is actually a very good way to look for positions, grow your network, etc. And that right there's actually a link that you can go to on an article about informational interviews, what they are, how to land them, etc. So always, 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 overwhelmingly, you are going to have to write a resume and a cover letter to apply for a job. So on the left side, I've got resume characteristics. On the right side, I've got cover letter characteristics. The purpose of a resume is simply to introduce your credentials, whereas the purpose of the cover letter is to introduce yourself. The cover letter never, never, never simply summarizes the information in your resume. It's going to tell the hiring manager why you're applying for the job, why you think you're good for it, why you think you're a good fit for it, and it may fill in gaps left by your resume. So with the resume, one of the most important things, and I mentioned this at the beginning of this presentation, one of the most important things for you to think about is design. Please, please, please keep in mind those CRAFT principles of design. So that's contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. Above all, your design shouldn't be complex. It shouldn't be newfangled. It should be easy, quick to read, professional, but it should be engaging. Consider what it communicates about you to just have the Times New Roman, template resume. Is the kind of company, does the kind of company that you're applying for, will they be open to, something outside of that? Or are they wanting to see that you can follow protocol and, color within the lines, so to speak? More than anything, the design of your resume needs to be a time-sensitive design. So what I mean by this is that you should be paying attention to what your hiring manager is going to be looking at first and doing your best to highlight that information. Or if anything, bring your reader's eye along those lines of information. So the first thing that your reader is going to look for is an objective statement. So this introduces you. It doesn't just say what job you want, it actually kind of introduces you as a professional. So getting back to that professional identity as opposed to job applicant identity, you want to, in this objective statement, identify your professional goals in terms of who you are and what you are able to do and what you also want to do. So my objective statement is going to introduce myself as an educator, not as someone looking for an instructor position. I may include that, but I really want the focus of that objective statement to be that professional identity. The next thing your hiring manager is going to look at is your education. Likely they're going to be looking at where you got your degree from, what your degree is, and your GPA. I would not include your GPA if it's not high. If it is a 4.0 or close to that, it's a good thing to include. It says a lot about you. The next thing is going to be your work experience, and very specifically, the hiring manager is going to look first at the position you held, next at the company or the organization where you worked, and then they're going to look at those bullet statements where you describe exactly what you've done. In those bullet statements, you want to make sure that you're using active verbs. There's a lot of resources out there that kind of give you some ideas about what verbs are best, what verbs show that you're a leader, that you take initiative. But that's what your hiring manager is going to look at, and they're likely going to look at it in that order. And then finally, you want to include some skills, just hard skills that you've learned over the years. These are technical skills, computer skills, any certifications, anything like that. Likely this isn't going to get attention at this time, whenever the first time the hiring manager looks at your resume, but it's still important to include. Now, some other relevant sections that you might include, and this is especially the case if you don't have any professional experience yet. You might want to include some relevant coursework. You might want to include volunteer work that you've done, especially if it's relevant to the company or the company's work that they carry out. And then finally, some side projects. One of the things that you can do, even though you haven't had professional experience, you can still show that you are working in professional genres, that you are still thinking about what it means to be a professional and to be an employee in that specific field. So, for example, a side project might be this SWOT analysis and proposal process in your English 332 class. This is an example of a side project that will show a company, hey, I am capable of doing the work that you want me to do. So this can kind of fill a gap in your professional experience in a kind of meaningful way. So moving to the cover letter, again, don't simply summarize the information in your resume. The first paragraph of your cover letter is to introduce yourself. It's kind of a housekeeping paragraph. You need to explain how you found out about the job and very, very briefly why you're a good fit and why you want the job. The The body of the cover letter is where you describe your experience. Why are you qualified to do this work? You don't want to just describe what you would get out of this, but what you can offer. And just like an essay, you can't just make claims without evidence. If you make a claim about I am a good communicator, you need to be able to back that up with specific examples from your previous work or from your schoolwork. And then finally, you summarize in one, at most two sentences. Make sure you're recapitulating that you are qualified and that you want to work at this company, and thank them, including your contact info. If you're lucky, you might get an interview. So usually there's typically two types of interviews, and it's often a mix of these. But the two types of interviews are going to be behavioral interviews and situational interviews. Behavioral are general questions. They kind of ask you to think about your past experiences, and the goal for them is to determine who you are. So questions you might be asked are, tell me about a time when you were really challenged. Tell me about yourself, things like that. These are assessing your behaviors, obviously, but they're assessing who you are as opposed to what you can do. A situational interview or interview questions is going to assess what you can do. And a lot of times these are specific, these are hypothetical, they're future oriented. So you may be asked to kind of describe what you would do in a specific situation. If you're in a more technical field, a situational interview question might actually involve doing some calculations. At times, I know that this is not specific in my field, but at times I know that interviews will involve questions similar to test questions. So if there is a specific kind of information that you need to know in order to be able to do this job, make sure that you know it so that you can answer questions effectively. And finally, unofficial materials. Things that you need to be thinking about that you may not be asked for explicitly. They may come about in kind of unknown or unexpected ways. The first thing is your online presence, personal website, social media. This isn't just your presence, what you present online, but also how you participate in these online spheres. So, obviously your Facebook profile, you want to make sure you're not having explicitly like negative things out there. You want to make sure that you present yourself at least as a professional. I think a lot of students take the route of just shutting down all of their social media or making everything private. That is up to you. But thinking about that participatory aspect of your online presence, your employers will want to see what you actually do put out there, because that does give them a sense of who you are and what you can do. My suggestion is to check your name on Google often, search for your first and last name, put it in quotation marks along with any other identifying information about you so that you can figure out what it is that your potential employers are finding out about you, because they will be searching your name. Business card, you can actually get these through the NC State print. I'm blanking on the name of it. There's kind of a print office in the student union. These will print business cards for you anytime you're out in a professional environment. Make sure you have these with you. Along with the business card, it's good to have prepared an elevator pitch. This is a brief oral summary of what you can do. It shouldn't be longer than 20 seconds, i.e. the length of an elevator ride. And you should always follow it up with your contact information, better yet, a business card, so that you can say, follow up with me if you have any questions. And then finally, a portfolio. I'm actually asking you to put this together for the final assignment, and this is evidence of your expertise. This can be things that you've written, projects you've worked on, things that you've published online, specific articles. Maybe you're doing some LinkedIn writing, anything that can prove to an employer that you can do the job that they are wanting you to do. Just like in your cover letter, you're providing specific evidence of your work and of your ability to do work. A portfolio is going to show that specific evidence. You might have a personal website where you show some of your media marketing campaigns, things like that. Even a social media presence is in some ways evidence of your expertise if you're going into, for example, social media marketing. But making sure that you have something that if someone were to ask for you, well, can you show me an example of you doing that? You can say, oh, by the way, actually, I do. I have that right here. And so for example, this semester you will walk away with two examples of expertise: the situation analysis as well as the formal proposal. These are genres that people want to see that you are able to do in some way, shape, or form, and they are examples of you not only collaboratively working together, working with other individuals, but they're examples of you doing research. They're examples of you communicating well. They're examples of you doing a lot of things that you will be asked to do in any kind of job environment. And so that is all I have for job materials. All right, thanks.